While my husband was working on the set of the movie Deliverance in the highlands of northern Georgia with the camera crew, I was there with our 3 children and my husband. Some of the actors and crew, along with their families, would take the rafts out on the river on the weekends for some much-needed relaxation time. They shot on the same section of the Chattahoochee River that we rafted on, and out of the 8 of us who were there on that particular Sunday afternoon, 4 of us, including myself, had previously rafted down this section of the river. However, the river had a new appearance this time, low as a result of several dry days in a row. Through the various rapids, one had to take a variety of different routes. We made a mistake that almost cost us our lives on the final set of rapids. The swirling force of the water caused the raft I was in to flip over, and after going backwards over a drop of 4 feet, we were unable to free ourselves from where we were lodged. The raft was pinned against the rocks because it was caught in a hydraulic, a natural phenomena that occurs when white water flows. I was flung off of the raft and became trapped between it and the rocks. At the same time, the power of the river was raining down on my head, and the suction of the hydraulic action was pushing me under. My arm was gripped by a man who was sitting on the raft, and he attempted to draw me back onto the raft. However, the best he could do was make it so that I could take a few short breaths here and there before being pulled back down by the water. I had no choice but to make the most of a bad situation. I was aware of my impending demise, but maintained a level of composure throughout the ordeal. I did not experience any feelings of terror. I was in a lot of agony from being thrown against the rocks, so I concluded that drowning would be the best option. The subsequent time that my head emerged from the water, when I was taking my final breath, I yelled at him to let off of me, and he did. I could feel the water pulling me under, so I just let go and let it take over. As I inhaled the water and my vision began to blur, I realized that there was no need in continuing to struggle. For a minute, the next thing I knew, I was high above the river, staring down at the raft that was wedged between the rocks below me. I looked down and saw the 2 men in the raft searching for me to emerge from beneath the water. I looked downstream and saw the other woman who had been in our raft clinging to a rock. She had gone downstream. I watched as my husband and my teenage sister, who had rowed down the rapids ahead of us without encountering any problems, came hurrying back up the hill to find out why all of the wreckage was floating down the river. We had prepared for the possibility that they may capsize by removing anything of value from their raft and placing it in ours. Nevertheless, they went under with such relative ease that we were able to just jump in behind them. I was able to get a bird's eye view of my spouse as he scaled a boulder in the river. Because of the commotion caused by the waves, he was unable to make out what the 2 guys who were still on the raft were trying to tell him. He was clueless as to where I was or what had taken place, but he was aware that I was absent. It appeared as though he was about to leap into the water in an effort to locate me, and I found myself instantly by his side, attempting to dissuade him from doing so. He wasn't much of a swimmer, and I was well aware that there was no sense in his trying. When I tried to stop him by reaching out with my hand, it went straight through him. As I looked down at my hand, the first thing that sprang to my mind was, oh my gosh, I'm dead. At that same moment, I had complete insight into the nature of existence, and I could see how the cosmos is composed of many different dimensions. My consciousness had grown so far beyond the physical plane that I was no longer aware of it or of myself, nor was I aware of the physical plane itself. There was no separating myself from any of it since I was an integral part of it all. It was a brilliant flash of light, and I was given permission to look into it for a brief moment. During that time, I was able to experience a feeling of love that was so profound, powerful, and overwhelming that the only word that comes to mind to describe it is pure bliss, even though that doesn't even begin to describe it. I was suddenly swept away, and found myself moving quickly through a vortex toward a stunning white light that was far, far in the distance. I continued to be overcome with an overpowering sense of love, both inside myself and all around me. There was not even the slightest bit of dread, let alone anxiety or concern. I even had the sensation that I'd done this before, and that I was recalling the fact that I was heading back home. I couldn't contain my happiness. I was completely unaware of my physical form and had no awareness of any constraints or restrictions. Nevertheless, I remained myself and was conscious of the fact that I was experiencing this experience. It didn't take me long to figure out that I wasn't the only one. Someone who I can only characterize as a loving being of light was traveling with me while we were moving at the speed of light. Mental communication was present between us. While I was in the tunnel, I was accompanied by a being of light. I was aware of who it was at the time, but I cannot tell you who it was today. someone I have known for all of eternity. This person is not associated with any religion and may be my guardian angel. We engaged in a considerable deal of telepathic contact. However, I am unable to describe the content of this conversation to you since it did not take the form of words. This being took me on a tour of the other side, where I witnessed a great number of other light beings going about their daily lives. The only part of the message that I can recall is being told that it wasn't my time to leave, that I still had more work to do in this life, and that if I choose to come back, I would be given access to information that would assist me in completing my task. As soon as I detected the presence of this creature, I was immediately aware that this was someone I had known for a very long time. But I am unable to reveal their identity at this time. I did not get the impression that it was any well-known religious person or a member of my family who had passed away. Rather, I had the feeling that it was a close friend who is always with me everywhere I go. Perhaps it was my guardian angel. This being communicated with me via telepathy and informed me that I had an option regarding my return. I told myself, no, I want this to go on forever. And it's true. Suddenly, we burst into the light, and I was presented with a whole new reality. Although it had some similarities to the physical world, this new reality was richer in color, more beautiful, and more incredible than the physical world. I saw animals, plants, mountains, lakes, and crystal-like structures that glistened and shimmered, some of which were quite enormous and intricately decorated. I observed creatures, luminous beings moving around and going about their regular activities. They don't have bodies, but rather they are different fields of energy that exist in the world. Instead of walking, they float through the air. They lead lives that are very similar to ours, yet devoid of the difficulties and suffering that we do. They are makers of magical things, as well as artists, musicians, dancers, singers, inventors, builders, and healers. The things they create are things that they will materialize in the physical universe during their next existence. Again, the being of light reminded me that the decision to stay or go was entirely up to me, but that there was still more work for me to complete in that existence, and that it was not yet time for me to move on. When I was still on the fence about going back, I was assured that if I did decide to do so, I would be given specific information that I could bring with me and share with others when I got there. After considerable deliberation, I decided to go back, and when I did, I was startled to find myself in front of a gigantic structure in the shape of a cone. The building was so tall that it appeared to continue on forever. It was explained to me that this location was the Hall of Knowledge. I went inside the structure and proceeded to fly in a spiraling upward direction through what seemed to be shelves of books, much like in a library. There were many millions of books, and I flew through all of them. When I finally made it to the peak, I shattered through it into a kaleidoscope of colors, and at the same moment, the top of my head emerged from the water. I was approximately 10 yards away from the raft as I floated downstream. I abruptly became aware of my surroundings, and I reached out for the rock that was closest to me. I managed to pull myself up, and I coughed up a significant amount of water as I did so. I was in a condition of shock, but I did not require any medical assistance at that time. I was unable to see the time on anyone's watch while I was beneath the raft, so I am unsure of how long I stayed there. It may have been as little as 3 or 4 minutes, or it might have been as long as 10. There was no passage of time in the place where I had gone. Even while I can't say for sure that I was clinically dead, I have no memory of struggling underwater or trying to hold my breath until I reached the surface of the water. My lungs were on the verge of exploding as I struggled to reach the surface during these other instances, and I remember them very well. What I can recall from the moment when my body was submerged in the water underneath the raft is what I have relayed to you here.